Welcome to PartnerOps Partner. I am your host, Aaron Howerton, and this week I have my new friend, I think I would say, Antonio Caridad, which he also said I could say charity because I was terrified I was going to say it wrong. We just covered that. That's apparently what Caridad means in translation. Is that correct?
Correct. Absolutely correct.
So Antonio and I met, I think last year. Did we connect on LinkedIn? Like one of us reached out to one of the other. I mean, my network is just kind of like blown up in the past year and a half of being active on LinkedIn. And right now, you and I have 284 mutual connections.
It's yeah, we connected on LinkedIn and then we met in real life at Catalyst. So that's
That's
absolutely correct.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
I met a lot of people at Catalyst. I think for me, one of the most fun things about being at Catalyst was the in-person connections that I did
Absolutely.
with all the people that I've known for the past year or so. Now, for me, well, let's do a couple of things first, listener, audience. If you don't know Antonio, you should. As normal, I will have a link to his bio. I will have a link to another couple of interviews that he's done recently. One's with Franz Joseph, where they talk PRM strategy, which I loved a lot of that you had to say there. And then you did another one with Mark Brigman at Partnernomics recently as well, where you get into your history. So I'm going to try to avoid those topics explicitly because people can go hear you on those other ones. Why retread? What I want you to know, listener, is that what Antonio brings to the table from an ops perspective, in my opinion, is one, more than a decade of experience in the IBM partner ecosystem where he got his start. He got an MBA, went right into channel analyst work, and has been doing analyst ops and then partner team growth and program development for almost over 15 years now across mostly at IBM, now at Megaport. And over the past 6 to 12 months, I guess you've been pushing. I saw a push you put on LinkedIn. You've been pushing a lot more into sharing on LinkedIn. What motivated? One, did I miss anything in your career summary?
No, you didn't miss anything. It's been a journey of diving into partnerships ever since IBM said and decided you would be great at this. Never looking back because yeah, it turned out that somebody saw my calling and I loved it, and I love every day of doing partnerships and learning a bunch of different things from legacy channel and legacy old school routes to now the new kind of partnerships, right? Part ecosystem
Yeah.
partnerships and all of that. So absolutely.
That's definitely something we should get into as well. So one, that's the cover. So for you listening, that's his pedigree, for lack of a better word. Antonio has started as an analyst. He's been doing the hard work, and I say the hard work because legacy channel is a different animal. You hinted toward this, right? When you say legacy, talk a little bit about what legacy means to you in this context.
That's a great question. So, channel is a word that, in my opinion, I hate it because it it it, it brings a lot of baggage with it, right? You
Hmm.
have a lot of like the very seasoned, and I don't want to say old, I want to say seasoned individuals that have grown in this world of channel and now are evolving. And then you have a lot of new school partnership people that are learning and growing in purely ecosystem, not really channel, right? And I kind of sit in the middle, right? Because of IBM, because I worked with
Yep.
a lot of those seasoned individuals that have done this for 20, 30. Hey, I had a boss that had done this for 40 years at IBM and
Hmm.
done and then this, right? And channel, what channel really means, what channel really is, it's old school resale, right? It's the old way of
There you
doing,
go.
of grabbing hardware through distribution or through pure value added resellers and reselling, right?
Yeah. True resale, right? Like you're
Yeah.
shipping hardware, or for me, my experience is a lot of licensing, right? Great.
Mhm.
You bought 100 licenses, so we track those licenses to you and we invoice you for them. And then whatever you do with those licenses is on you, really, right? Maybe we know your customers, maybe we don't. It's not nearly as important for us to know your customer in those traditional models
Correct.
as it is in the modern model. So is that a fair distinction in terms of like, am I getting it? Are we tracking?
That's absolutely right.
Okay.
Now, and I never done hardware resale. I've always been in SaaS and software, but that's where
Okay.
things started evolving, right? Because when you get into the real old school legacy channel and licensing, you're running into cross border issues, right? But when you start getting into the new kind of like what SaaS, how SaaS started evolving this ecosystem, those borders start to get blurred, and so that's where you start not necessarily trading one license from here to there It's about a subscription, it's about a service, not necessarily a license, right? So you're absolutely right. It's that evolution of how something was sold initially and taking that idea into what we have today, which is much more than just pure resale, right? You have
Yeah.
agency, you have referral and affiliates, you have tech partnerships, you have what else am I missing in there? I mean, you have co-sell, you have a bunch
Yeah,
of
you
different, you
have
have marketplace
lots of
selling, right?
language, right?
Hmm.
ISV, tech partnerships,
Exactly.
OEM, co-sell partner, which is a form of resale. I still see companies, right, in the software space or hardware, where there's a mix of software, hardware, whatever, right? Companies are still trying to stand up resale programs. They're calling them resellers.
Hmm.
How do you feel about that? Do you feel like that language applies in a SaaS model? Do you feel like it's a stretch from where it used to be? Are we just using language we're comfortable with?
That's a good question. I think a lot of what startups and scale ups are seeing is that a lot of people think that resale is going away. I don't believe resale is going away. And then the reason why I tell you this is because I have literally partners or companies knocking on my door every single day wanting to resell what we do at Megaport, right? Now,
Mhm.
the difference is that this might be switching, this might be changing from industry to industry. We as Megaport, we are telco, and so maybe in the telco world that is much more old school, much more defined, and there's very defined rules of engagement and things like that
Mhm.
because of um, regulations. This is the reason why you have companies doing this, right? But then there's in a more traditional SaaS environment, yes,
Yeah.
it's evolving less into resale, less into like, hey, I take your product and you don't have to think about it. I'll do everything. I'll take liability. I'll take indemnity. I'll take support. I'll take all of that. Into more of a code sell where we both go into this approach together. And
Yeah.
especially, I don't do everything. You have to support me in many things, right? I don't have a support team to support your product that is not mine. That was much more what you used to see in the 90s and the early 2000s and in
Yeah.
midway through last decade, right? But in this day and age, like you don't have those born in the cloud or those startup slash scale up MSPs that can do it all. So they need your
Yeah.
help.
It's
You need to go code sell.
exactly. It's literally not the same model, right? That's my take. Is I think to what you're talking about in telecom, I can definitely see how resale still plays a part because you still have infrastructure needs and you have different
Mhm.
aspects of maybe you're throttling channel access or access to text through certain pipeline. Like I can see how that might work from both a technology and a sales perspective, and that they're going to have to stand on their own to build a network, and then they're reselling on the back of Megaport and things like that.
Mhm.
For software, though, and I push back when people talk about having resellers in a SaaS model. It kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit because I'm not shipping these companies licenses. I'm
Right.
not shipping them hardware. Everything that goes out the door is already pre-tagged to a customer. If we do a cloud implementation, right now we're absorbing the cost of the infrastructure.
Mhm.
So you have licensing,
Yep.
but now I think there's also a product gap here because if you don't have your product team on board while you start doing resellers, well, if you want to do true resellers, then the resellers need to be able to log in my opinion, spin up a new license, have ownership over that instance, set the customer up on that instance. Like that's resale. That's hands off. You are
Correct.
capable. To your point, you can do support. You manage it. We know about it. We know the customer. I think that's the big difference is in the traditional quote. I'm going to use air quotes here. Teams who's just not watching this on YouTube. Air quotes here for channel. When people say channel, you said that comes with a lot of baggage earlier.
Mhm.
What baggage is this the baggage that it comes with? Is the pre-assumptions about what a channel is? Is there other baggage that maybe we're not covering that it's worth
I
bringing
think
out here from an operational standpoint?
I think it's part of this is that, and then part of it is I always get into conversations where people say like see the title channel in my experience, and they automatically assume like, oh, all you know is resale. That's purely all you know, right? Which
Yep.
is completely wrong. It's a completely wrong way of seeing it because, and it's not their fault, right? It's something that I like historically from my days at IBM and into what I do today. It's like I've been trying to change it because I do much more than only resale, right? I do agency these days. I do tech. I did a lot of tech partnerships at IBM when
Yep.
tech partnerships didn't have a name. It was the beginning of it. And so that's kind of like the baggage that comes sometimes with the word channel, that some organizations use it the wrong way to mean indirect or to mean ecosystem.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that are seasoned individuals or growing in partnerships see the word channel and they only think resale, and that's about it. Yeah, like you get like horse blinders, and that's about it, right? And so that's kind of like the baggage that comes with it, that you get encapsulated into a little bit of a corner that's like, oh, you only do and know this part of partnerships, when it's not right.
Well, see, I think I'm torn about that, Antonio, because I think that people do that. I agree. I use channel, and I usually caveat for people. If I say channel, I do mean traditional channel meetings, traditional reseller, because for
Right.
what you said, like you've got bosses that have been doing this stuff for 30, 40 years at IBM. Like this is like channel distribution, this is not new. Channel
Right.
operations, I tell people frequently, I work in partner operations. I
Mm-hmm.
happen to have some channel ops background, but that is, when you say channel operations, it's exactly what you're talking about. In the industry, when people say channel ops, I know, and maybe I don't like it because linguistically, a channel is anything. Like, I don't want to offend my direct sellers, but direct is a channel for sales, right? If you think about concepts of tranching or like whatever, right? It's just a word that means a path at the end of the
Right.
day. So yes, historically, channel has been indirect. I do, again, I still find people lean into that understanding. If you say channel, they immediately think reseller. But if I say partnerships, now they're thinking, ooh, what does he mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then we get the fun dance of like, okay, well, when you say agency, I say affiliate, right? Like we don't necessarily mean the same thing when we talk about these
Yeah.
concepts either. We don't have a shared definition yet of what partnerships and these types should look like. So I think we agree that there is an assumption, but we're both trying to fight that assumption to help people have a broader view
Exactly.
of what it means to be in channel and partnerships. Let's pivot from here because I do want to talk about something. One of the things that I think you and I get along with real well is that your success is built on a background of operations, in my opinion. When I
Mm-hmm.
look at it in our
Mm-hmm.
conversations, you've been successful on the programmatic side, on the partner management side, but talk about the role of ops in that success and how important that's been for you for just a couple minutes.
Yeah. So
Or tell me it hasn't been. Also an
that's
option. You could also say it hasn't been at all, Aaron. It's been dumb luck. That's also acceptable. It's your
That's a good
story.
question. So it's been a much different experience from IBM to Megaport, right? IBM, a lot
Yeah.
of things, especially a lot of tooling, is homegrown. So it's built in house. Megaport, some of it
Yep.
is bought out, some of it is homegrown just because we're telco, right? And so
Love that
ever
caveat.
since my beginning at IBM and here, PartnerOps has never been a thing. So I've always had to take care of that, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, somebody has to do it. And who's going to do it? The only one that does it. So, and
Yeah.
so
The
it's,
program manager.
exactly. And so, I personally, it's near and dear to my heart because I had a post a few months ago about like the unsung heroes of partnerships, right? And it's because
Hmm.
partner ops is what keeps things working. It's that thing that nobody wants to think about, but it's that thing that somehow happens. Somebody does it, right? And the reality is that it's what drives everything underneath, right? It's what is it, like it's the role that's creating all of those metrics, all of those KPIs, all of that data to ensure that you
Hmm.
are showing and measuring results, right? It's that person that keeps all the tooling for your partners and internally working and keeps enhancing it, right? And then it's that person that keeps creating every time you need something new. It's a person that creates those new processes, works cross functionally across board with multiple teams to ensure that that process gets implemented and everybody works on their part and then implements it and then runs it, right? And so again,
Yep.
it's that part that nobody wants to talk about, yet it happens. So
Well, it's buried. I think you hinted there. My experience so far with it is well, when I've been in partner ops related roles or channel ops in particular started there, for about 5 or 6 years now. And what is routine is the work that I do from company to company is it doesn't change. I'm currently in a program manager role. I have been in a channel ops role at Atlassian. I was the partner ops manager at Six Sense, reporting to RevOps. So I've reported. Sorry, into RevOps, I've reported into a channel ops team that rolled up to a larger ops group, and now I'm on the program side. But the work that I'm doing day to day across all these companies is basically identical. So for me, I'm looking at like when I look at roles or I look at the industry and where it's headed, like right now we don't really have a consolidated place of where we should live and what we
Mm-hmm.
do. We tend to be driven by the role itself tends to be driven by a specific operational need around PRM implementation, really consistently with deal reg. When would you, if you had a chance to go to an early stage company, and I'm not actually sure kind of where we're at, like where you're at with Megaport and the size of that company, where that's at, or how big your team is,
Mm-hmm.
but when would you look to, if you had a chance to start from scratch, when would you look to bring someone in to take on that ops focus, knowing that it's always a mix of program managers up front, but clearly at some point there's going to be a need for that full-time role. When would you look to bring that in? What kind of timeline are you
That's
working
a
on?
great question. So
I do that.
that I think it has to be that I mean, you have a partnerships leader, right? And once you have that
Yeah.
partnerships leader that's starting to create their team, I think that it has to be the second or third hire. And the reason why I say this is the following. Because that partnership leader is going to be the orchestrator, right? That partnership leader is going to be in charge of strategy, number one thing.
Hmm.
Second thing is setting that foundation up correctly for that partnership team to work. And then once you start having those PAMs, those partner account managers, or in some organizations again, channel account managers, those have to be focused on those partners, right? On that
Hmm.
relationship, on multi-threading relationships and connections, on onboarding, on life cycle, on enablement, and all of that, right? But then at the same time, you still need somebody to make sure that operationally everything is working. You don't want the PAMs or your partnership leader focused on the day-to-day minutia of running a tool, creating efficiencies and processes, especially focusing on partner experience and all that, because it's a huge job, right? It takes a
Hmm.
lot out of you, and so that this person is supposed to take the blockers out for the rest of the team, right? Make it so
Yep.
simple that they don't even know he's there or she's there, right? And
Yep.
so in my opinion, that partner operations person has to be probably the third hire, second or third hire, to ensure that everything behind the scenes is working seamlessly and it's working efficiently for the other guys to focus on strategy and to focus on their partners, on their day to day and week to week and month to month with their partners, right? Because that
Yeah, I
also
like
takes
that.
a lot out of you. So yeah.
It does. I like that, and so that's consistent. By the way, I know what I feel like, right? Because I'm in the seat. But part of why I bring on partner leaders is to find out what's the tone in the market. Is am I trending with the way other mentalities are? And I've talked to 3 people now, so it's not like I've got huge trending. But this is a really consistent point that partner operations as a function should come in 2 or 3, and I think the balance is 2 or 3 because your program growth and your program needs are probably going to dictate what seat they come in at, right? If we're
Mhm.
hyper focused and hyper specific around, hey, we're going to build an agency model, we're going to run agency for the next 12 months. Well, agency requires a lot of operational support and a lot of operational rigor to do well. If we're doing an affiliate program, that's a little bit less operationally heavy, depending on what that affiliate program looks like, right? If we're running a tech program, that's a completely different operational rhythm. So this is what I'm seeing is that there's variations in partner operations, and the program types may dictate, is it a second hire or a third seat hire? What do we need more? And I mean, maybe building. So you talk about this on the Partnernomics podcast. You did talk about alignment, and I loved what you had to say about alignment on that podcast because I do think that's critical. Like from my perspective, that's critical. If you get good alignment, does that delay, like if you can build good early use case consensus with the teams
Mhm.
internally as you get started, does
Mhm.
that delay that need for an ops hire in your opinion? Does that make it more important to bring in?
That's a great question. If you get full alignment where multiple divisions or the whole organization is behind what you're doing and is helping out, yes, it can absolutely delay the need for a partner ops person because, again, you're getting support from finance on a lot of things. You're getting support from
Hmm.
product, you're getting support from marketing. So you're splitting a little bit of the work with those PAMs or or that partnership person,
Yeah.
and so as does you do are a little bit delaying that, right? But as your partner base grows, depending on the size that you have, let's say let's say that you have two PAMs, one partnership leader, two PAMs, and you have 50 partners. At this point, those PAMs have 25 partners each. Let's pretend
Yep.
that your partnership leader is taking the 10 strategic, and then the other two guys are taking 20 and 20, right? At that point, you are up to your neck in work with partners, especially your
Yeah.
strategic, with all of what you have to do. Because it's not, one important thing is that partners are not set it and forget it. You need to stay on top of it. You need to show them love. You need to be there with them. You need to teach them how to fish. You need to bring them into opportunities. It has to be a partnership. It's not something that you think they work for you, because they don't, right? And
Yep.
so at that point, you absolutely need somebody to start to create and to be running everything behind the scenes. Otherwise, where are these people gonna find the time to split between running everything behind the scenes plus spending time with 20 partners, right? it's
Yeah.
it's undoable, right? So it
Got it.
really depends on those two factors. If you have all that alignment where everybody in the company is pitching in to the different processes and efficiencies you have, plus what is the size of your partner base at this point, right?
Yeah. I think that's where, and when I talk about early stage hires as well, I think it gets tricky, right? Because if you're an early stage company, or even not an early stage company, I mean, I think partner ops tends to work a lot like HR at the end of the day. I've worked at a lot of small businesses and they're constantly hiring an HR rep full time too late. Like if you had 100 people in your company, you do not have somebody helping you with HR or a contract with an outside company, you're too late. You're now working from behind. Your HR rep's going to be stressed. You're going to have bad policy in place. People aren't going to be happy. You need to do that earlier. Salesforce gives you clear metrics. That you go to Salesforce website and they say, great, if you're building Salesforce, here's the number of admins you need based on your number of users. And they give you metrics for like your full-time admin, your part-time admin. It is always their plan, their suggested recommendation is always more aggressive than people hiring. It is
Mm-hmm.
not uncommon, therefore, for me to come into a company, even up to like 3,000 plus in terms of employees, and they've never had anybody focus on partner operations and say, cool, let's get all this kind of lined out. Is always it's slow growth, and again, we're borrowing, begging, borrowing, and stealing. And so for me, the role tends to be I focus more on the PMO side, right, and the alignment side. But that's where I think the role is going to get some distinction in the next few years. Is I'm more of a PMO project manager driving strategic change and strategic insight across all these different like cross functional projects. I've got more than 10 projects I'm contributing to in my current full time role because they all touch partnerships and they're trying to get, hey, what insight do we have, right? What do we need to be aware of for partnerships? And they're kind of showing up all at the same time. I know other people who are really heavy on the technical side. They love managing the Salesforce ecosystem, having hands on. And I like that too. Don't get me wrong. That's a hard part. I like to be hands in and get my hands dirty. But I think that's a testament, right, to what drives the need for partner ops. Well, to your point, if I'm summarizing what you've said, it's your size, right? Your focus,
Mm-hmm.
the work and the bandwidth of the people you've got in your team, and then it's going to be different every company. And then I think one thing that you drive, talk about the value of empathy in what you do, because this is a sub thread, a sub theme of all the calls I've heard with you, of all the calls I've been on with you. When I peruse your LinkedIn, empathy is this underlying value that's never explicitly called out in how you work, but it seems to be really, really important. Am I on the mark here, or am I missing something that you've?
It's important. It's one of those things that as I mentioned earlier about a post a few months back about calling
And I'll
partner
link
ops
the post. I'm pretty sure I've got it because you say in there. I marked it by the way because it says the part I pulled out is the partner ops momentum is real and here. You had a whole post about it, so I'm going to share that
right.
out too because I want to make sure people see that and recognize it's not just me that thinks this. I need backers. So, anyways, go ahead.
Exactly,
Sorry.
absolutely. But yeah, empathy is a big thing, because the thing is, you always hear about, especially around different teams, like recognition, and you never hear about the partner ops or sale ops people getting recognized, right? Even though they do all of this work behind the scenes, they are running the show behind the scenes, like it or not. But they are never part of the president's clubs. They're never part of the chairman's awards. They're never part of those kind of things, right? And it's important that this kind of people that do a lot of great work, that do a lot of fantastic things, and this is not specifically only talking about partner ops. This is rev ops in general, that they get recognized for all of the things that they do, like handling. And I can tell you this: in my days at IBM, all of our CRM was homegrown, right? Completely different thing. And then when I joined
Very
Megaport,
normal for that period. Yeah.
I started learning Salesforce. And Salesforce is an animal in itself. And I'm not talking about explicitly here, but anywhere. Animal is an animal.
Yeah.
Salesforce is an animal itself. And navigating and cleaning and maintaining data hygiene inside Salesforce with a big sales team is a big deal, right? It's a big deal. And managing all of that,
Hmm.
it's important. Then obviously, like making sure that the metrics are up to date, making sure that you're always measuring things, making sure that you're creating customer efficiencies and customer experience correctly, and and also partner experience, all of that. So it's important that we recognize all of these people that are working tirelessly on these things. And I can tell you, because I've seen throughout my career people that work very late every day to ensure that everything runs well,
Hmm.
and they rarely get any recognition, they rarely get mentioned, they rarely get to stand on a podium and talk a little bit about these things. And so every time I have the opportunity to use my voice and my position to highlight this kind of individuals, I try to do that.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't think it's just us individuals, though, Antonio. What I want to call out here is that you're like when you talk about your last name and the interpretation toward charity. I was like, well, that makes complete sense because one of the things that I think if anybody wants to go troll your LinkedIn, one of the things that I see you doing constantly, and it's not bad. It can be bad, but you do it authentically. Is you are constantly being with people, recognizing people, thanking people for how they've educated you or taught you or the space they've given you. You're doing this with your partners. You're doing this with people in the industry. You're doing this for your company. You're doing this for your friends. Like I see photos, saw a photo of you and Matt Irving recently, right? You two managed to get together, which made me super jealous because I love Matt. But you've talked about Blake Williams, Alan Adler, Jay McBain, Jared Fuller, Lincoln X, and you are constantly just drawing attention to the people around you in your orbit. And I don't think I would call it like a mastery. It's like a tagging machine, right? You're a tagging machine on LinkedIn. And that's one of the ways to get people engaged, but it's also, you can drive people nuts. You do it authentically. So I appreciate the approach that you take, but I see that underlying like empathy for your partners. You did this on Partnernomics. You're like, yeah, you can't go to your partners and assume that you're their most important thing. You need to treat every partner, you need to appreciate the fact that they're at the table with you and they've given you that time
Hmm.
because they have 30 other companies that are trying to do the same thing,
Yeah.
right? And so I see that as an underlying call. I think that's a key to part of your success. I feel it when we talk on the phone, and I feel it when I look at what you're doing. So I appreciate you. Thanks for being a positive force out there, both for partner ops, also for partnerships, and for joining me today. As we wind down, we're getting close to the end of our time. I'm really trying to get better at the time box. I want to highlight that I think I want to have you back later, and I want to go way deep on this IBM cloud sales,
Let's
like
do it.
this when you because when IBM, just a quick call out for my listeners, if you've never worked in any of these legacy companies, somehow I've worked in multiple companies where they're going from like on-prem to cloud-based delivery, and it is crazy how complex that transition is and
Hmm.
underappreciated from an operation. All the things they make the business decision a lot of times without realizing the technical complexity, and then everybody's like a mad gambit to figure out how do we make this work as they start to sell it. That's a conversation to talk about, going deep on that sometime. So I want to have you back to go through that because I think that's
Absolutely.
valuable and it's crazy that there's still companies that need to make that transition. But as we wrap up, we're getting into our topical questions. I'm not good about doing these because sometimes I get distracted by the other stuff.
All good.
You get two subjects. I'm going to give you two subjects. You pick one, and then I'm going to ask you a question in there, and you can choose to answer it however you like. So your two topics are movies or sports.
Sports.
Sports. Okay, I might make you some enemies here because you're a really positive guy. But I'm going to ask you this: if
I
you had
don't
to
mind.
pick,
I don't mind making enemies in sports. So there you go.
there you go. Okay, well that's true. It tends to be a pretty combative thing, and I'm not a sports guy. I'm like
Fair
really
enough.
not. So I'm interested to know of all the sports in the world, if you had to pick one sport to completely remove from existence, and like no sport, it doesn't exist anymore. It's no longer recognized as a sport. All you people that play it, it's just a hobby. What would that sport be?
My God, I didn't think your question was gonna go that way. You
That's what
did,
happens when you
because
get a
I
non-sports guy.
love sports, and I like, if the listeners don't know, I played soccer for a long time. I played in college, and I still play it. I played a full game a couple of days ago,
Okay,
full
so
90-minute
soccer's
game.
safe. We're
Soccer
not
is
getting into soccer.
absolutely safe. Soccer is safe. College basketball is safe.
Can we be
Um,
clear? Hold on, hold on. I also want to recognize that you do not have to Americanize yourself for my audience. Football is safe.
Football. There we go. Football is safe. So if I had to take a sport away, I'm gonna make a lot of enemies here.
Do it. I
Pickleball.
told you. I told you.
Pickleball. Pickleball.
Pickleball. You would
Pickleball, and the
eliminate
reason why I say
pickleball.
this, pickleball, being from Mexico and Latin America, I think paddle is the better sport. Apparently,
Ooh,
there's a whole thing in the U.S. about the pickleball lobby didn't want paddle to come in. There's a thing, but there was a Super Bowl. There was a
this is
commercial in the
fascinating.
Super Bowl with like Eat Trade Babies, or it was State Farm or something like that, where babies call pickleball like this is the this is tennis for babies or something like that, and that's it. It's like a kid's game that it's like, come on, man. Like if you're gonna play small size tennis, play it with like a real ball, and so I'll
Listen,
take pickleball off the list. I know
I'm an avid
I love
pickleball player,
pickleball, but I
Antonio.
had to choose one.
Uh, That's not true. I'm not an avid anything player. That is hilarious, by the way. If you, yeah, so listeners, if he just deeply offended anyone by that, you need to just shoot him a LinkedIn, call him out on LinkedIn, like make this public. I'll answer the same question. I try to be fair. For me, if I had to pick one, and I'm going to make a lot more enemies because mine would be American football. I
There you
grew
go.
up going to these games in band, and I've watched the sport. And if I look at any sport that like maybe rugby. I don't know. I don't know why I like rugby better. It's more dangerous, but any sport where people are just slamming into each other like that, I'm like, it just seems dangerous. It seems kind of silly. I don't get excited about it. It's so slow. Like put me in a basketball game any day of the week because those basketball keeps moving. Even football, soccer, right? That has a better pace. I mean, it's big field, but we're just moving constantly. This
I
could
get it.
just be my ADHD brain registering its
I
vote and
hey,
saying,
I get
"There
it.
you
I
go."
get it. I like the NFL, but I cannot do college football. It's and maybe it's because I went to Carolina, and even though we're always start the season ranked, we're a horrible football team. We're a basketball school. Maybe that's the reasoning why college football is not my thing. But it's a fact that it takes 4 hours to go through a freaking college football game because
It does. Well,
every first down the clock stops. It's like I don't get it. Yeah, yeah.
and I live in Arkansas, and where I live, people know my area because of Fayetteville, Arkansas, the U of A, the Razorbacks, and they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that must be fun to go to games." And I'm like, I would never go to a game. I will endure a game maybe once in my life because I have a son that wants to try to go, but otherwise, I cannot see giving up an 8 hour like driving down, finding
Yeah,
parking, going to like. No, case in point, we used to throw Super Bowl parties where I used to live, and the point of the Super Bowl party was so that all the guys, the husbands would typically get together and we would play board games during the Super Bowl, and then we would pause to watch the halftime show and then go back and finish our board game. Like that's where I'm at with all that. Antonio, thank you for coming. I really appreciate you being here, man. I'll have this episode up.
thanks for having me.
Well, this is all live. It'll be up in a couple of days. It'll be this week. So if you have questions for Antonio, listener, I'm going to have his bio, link to his LinkedIn in my thing. I will link out to the two shows he's been a part of that I enjoyed his content on as well. I will link out to his PartnerOps Hero post. I'd love for you to go engage with that and drive that. Otherwise, as always, thank you for listening. Thanks for your time and good luck partnering.